It's about helping you understand what are the bars of your own prison. What are the things that are keeping you from being fully you? What are those mindsets that are keeping you locked back behind this wall of toxicity, of shame, of regret, of guilt that's not allowing you to come through and be fully you? From the outside looking in, some people just seem to have the wind at their back. They seem to have everything going in their favor. They got the good genes, they got the good parents, they got the good money, they got the good looks, they got everything. And life just seems to go their way. These people are comfortable in their own skin. They find it easy to be around other people. They make friends easily. They find it easy to fall in love. They let people into their lives and they can develop these relationships with other people. They are what we would consider quote unquote normal. Sure, these people may experience some struggles just like anybody else. But when they run into struggles, they seem to have this emotional surplus, emotional intelligence, confidence, skills that allow them to move right through any issue that comes their way. They're those people that can bounce back really fast. They've got this healthy set of mindsets. Then there are the rest of us who got something a little bit different. We got a different kind of inheritance, an inheritance that didn't necessarily set us up for success. We got an inheritance from the universe that says, you know what? You're going to figure out everything the hard way on your own. We got this inheritance that feels like it's dragging us down, not setting us up to do better than the people that came before us. And we feel like we're getting robbed of living a great life. We feel like we're getting robbed of this great future that was supposed to be ours. And on the hardest days, we find ourselves asking the question, is this it? Is this everything that life has to offer? This inheritance that got passed down to me is sort of this prison of toxicity. And these mindsets that I've inherited are like the bars of my cage. And that's what my book is essentially about. It's about helping you understand what are the bars of your own prison. What are the things that are keeping you from being fully you? What are those mindsets that are keeping you locked back behind this wall of toxicity, of shame, of regret, of guilt that's not allowing you to come through and be fully you? That's what I write about in my book. That's what it means to break and untangle, to break free from that past, to break out of that prison, to break out of that cage, and to untangle those mindsets, those ideas, those beliefs that are holding you back and keeping you from being the fully expressed version of the greatness that is within you. That's what it means to break and untangle. And when you are somebody that has the courage to break and untangle, you are a person in a long line of people that came before you that said, you know what? This shit stops with me. This shit is not going to keep going past me. It ends with me. And that takes a brave and courageous decision. That is a brave and courageous act on your part to make that decision to do something different than has ever been done in your family before. And the ultimate goal of that decision is so that you can experience what I call personal freedom. The freedom to be you. In psychology and in spirituality, there are lots of ways that personal freedom has been expressed or tried to be conveyed. Personal freedom is what meant the most to me because it is me being free to be me. So whether you call that enlightenment or salvation or nirvana or whatever, it is that thing that allows you to just be you, for you to be in touch with the core part of who you are at the self level, minus all the bullshit, the burdens, the stuff that tries to block you from that fully expressed version of who you really are. That's personal freedom. And that's the ultimate goal of doing the work that I talk about in my book, doing the work of what you're doing here, watching this and thinking about these ideas. That's doing the work so that you can get to that place of personal freedom. For me, getting here happened because during the 2008 recession, I had built a business and I had done the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing to be quote unquote successful. I had all the trappings of success, as they say, but I wasn't feeling successful, which I think is a really important distinction in our lives for people that are high performing people like you. There's a really big distinction between being successful, having success, and feeling like a success. Feeling successful. Those are two very, very different things. Feeling success became clear to me when all of the trappings of my success, all the evidence, material evidence of my success were taken from me in that recession of 2008. When I lost my business, when I lost my employees, when I lost everything I had, it became clear to me that my happiness shouldn't be contingent on all of these things. If I were truly happy, if I truly felt like I was living a life of purpose and meaning, you could take everything away from me and I would be okay. I would still be okay with me, right? Sure, it might be uncomfortable to not have the things, but I would be okay. And when I experienced everything going away, I was not okay. It was not okay with me because my identity was tied up in that job, that business. My identity was tied up in being the boss and having employees. My identity was tied up in leading the nonprofit. My identity was tied up with having money in the bank account. My identity was tied up with all of these different things that told me who I was. Chad, because you have that, that's who you are. But that's not who I am. That's not who I was. And it took me a long time. It took all those things going away before I realized that that's not who I was. And so I decided during that time, and it's kind of a dark thing to say, but things were dark. All right, things were dark. And I made the decision that I'm either really going to lean into life and I'm really going to do life. I'm going to figure this shit out, or I'm checking out, right? I'm done. And I decided I was going to lean in. When I decided to lean in, that meant I had to be open to things that I'd never been open to before. I was, anything to do with personal development, self-help, all that guru woo-woo bullshit was really uncomfortable for me until I got to a place where I really needed it. And the mindsets that I had been raised with by leaning on faith or spirituality no longer worked for me. And I had to find a new way. I had to find a new way of a new lens, a new mindset, a new way to see the world, a new way to see myself, a new way to approach how I interacted with other people. All of that had to shift and change for me. And the reason I was able to get to this place where it was either you're going to lean all the way in or you're going to check out was because life wasn't really pretty otherwise. I found myself in this really deep, dark depression. I had laid in bed for about 6 months, no kidding, about 23 hours a day. I would just lay in bed. And it was awful. And this is somebody that had been very vibrant, that had started and led nonprofits, that had started and led businesses, led teams. I'd done some things that I could look to and be proud of. And yet here I was spending 23 hours a day in bed. I can remember my husband coming in, and he was my boyfriend at the time, Pasha, who's now my husband. Pasha would come in and he would put my pants on the bed and he would say, "Get up, babe, let's go grab something to eat." And I would take those pants and I would put one leg into the pants and I had no more energy. Like, it took all the energy I had to put one leg through my pants. And I would just slip them back off and crawl back into bed. I just could not muster up the energy. So that was depression for me at the worst. And I had experienced depression all of my life since about 4th grade. And I don't think I really knew what depression was. Clearly at that age, I didn't have the words to say I'm depressed and know what that meant. But looking back on it, I think that's when I really started experiencing depression. That's when I started seeing the school counselor. That's when I started really having issues at school and fitting in and being comfortable with myself or being ashamed of myself. There was also a lot of stuff going on at home. So that was my track record with depression. Because I'd had success, I felt really ashamed to ask for help. I felt really ashamed to ask for medication. I felt ashamed to ask for therapy because I had been successful. I had been at the top of my game at that point in my life, and it would have brought so much shame on me to have asked for help. Or at least that's how I was thinking about it. And so I got to this place where it was like, you're either going to check all the way in, lean all the way in, or check out. Looking back on it, as hard as it was also one of my life's greatest gifts, because it revealed to me that this, if you could think of my life as a house, the foundation on which my house was built was total crap. It was not steady. It was not stable. I didn't have the core things that made a human being feel human and experience humanity. And I discovered that through this awful experience of going through this awful depression. That's when it got revealed to me that there was an opportunity for a different way, for a different kind of life. But I also knew that if I managed to pull out of this cloud of depression that I had been in, that it wasn't something I was willing to go back to. And I will tell you, depression, like I mentioned, has followed me since I was a kid. It follows me still, but over the years, I have figured out ways to make the frequency at which depression hits me less frequent. And when it does happen, I manage to make those days much shorter. So it doesn't happen as often, and it doesn't last as long anymore. But yeah, it still happens to me, but it's just part of my life experience. And I don't want to bullshit you and tell you that once you get rid of your depression, it never comes back. That has not been my experience, but I've certainly learned strategies and tactics for dealing with it and living with it and managing it in a way that allows me to continue to live a good life. And so I think that's really the point. Life is about suffering. You're going to suffer. And so that's just part of it. But I think the key is to be able to step outside of the suffering and be able to look objectively at the suffering and be able to say, this thing, the challenges that I have in my life and the suffering that is coming along with it means something to me. It's a worthy cause. There's purpose in my life. And because I have purpose attached to my life and the challenges that I'm experiencing in my life and the inevitable suffering that comes as a result of those challenges, because it's attached to my purpose and my meaning, it means something that this suffering even exists. It means that I'm moving closer and closer toward the life that I want for myself, for the people in my life, for the difference that I want to make. And if you can look at the suffering that you experience in your life as evidence of getting closer to who you are and who you want to become, then that suffering can mean something and you can move through it without it becoming debilitating, without it letting you get you in the bed for 23 hours a day for 6 months, because you're moving closer to the person you were meant to be.